This is what happened to every Lost Toy Story villain. So let's start with the one who kicked it all off, Sid Phillips. Andy's 11-year-old next-door kid neighbor with the skull t-shirt, the manic laugh, and a very specific talent for making children everywhere genuinely uncomfortable. And honestly, when I was younger, Sid was one of the few Toy Story characters that actually creeped me out. Because while Andy treated his toys like best friends, Sid treated them like science experiments, strapping M80s to action figures, performing what he called double bypass brain transplants on dolls, and building a room full of mutant hybrids he kept like trophies.
Patient is prepped. No one's ever attempted a double bypass brain transplant before.
Some of these creations, for example Babyface, ended up playing a crucial role in Woody's escape, which means Sid accidentally built some of the most important characters in the entire first movie. And the moment when Woody comes to life in front of him, Sid doesn't double down. He runs into his house screaming and never comes back out. Gone from the franchise for the next 15 years, with most of us assuming he'd simply been written off forever. Then Toy Story 3 did something quietly brilliant. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, a garbage truck pulls up to Andy's house. The driver is bobbing his head to music, headphones on, yellow safety vest over a faded black t-shirt with a skull on it. At first, I thought it maybe was just a fun Easter egg, but then years later, director Lee Unkrich confirmed it himself. That garbage man is Sid, now in his early 20s, collecting other people's trash for a living. He just became a regular person with a regular job, still wearing the same shirt and still clearly enjoying the act of destroying things. Except now, someone pays him for it. So what happened to Sid? Well, he turned into a garbage man. And honestly, good for him. And while Sid was undoubtedly the most famous villain from the original Toy Story, he wasn't the only thing Woody and Buzz had to worry about. Because right alongside him was one very angry dog, Scud. Now, compared to villains like Lotso or Stinky Pete, Scud is probably the first character people forgot, and honestly, that's a little unfair. I mean, when was the last time you even thought about Scud before clicking on this video? Throughout the original movie, Scud is relentless. He chases Woody and Buzz through the yard, hunts them across the Pizza Planet parking lot, and nearly ends their escape attempt single-handedly during the moving truck scene. Unlike every other villain in this franchise, there's no reasoning with him, no negotiating, and no tragic backstory. He's just a dog who wants to catch something.
Ready, set, now!
Which probably makes him the simplest villain Toy Story ever produced. Or the most honest one. Whether he made it back home, whether Sid even went back for him, Pixar never tells us. And given that Toy Story came out in 1995, the math isn't exactly comforting either. This makes Scud one of the most forgotten villains in Toy Story history. But believe it or not, he's not even the most forgotten villain we're talking about today. Later on, we'll get to a group of villains that disappeared so completely that most of you don't even remember their names anymore. Scud wasn't the only villain who disappeared after his movie, because while most people remember the toys, Toy Story 2 gave us one of the strangest human villains ever. Al. You remember him, right? The loud, sweaty toy collector from Toy Story 2 who kidnapped Woody and nearly shipped him off to Japan. His fate might be one of the funniest mysteries in the franchise. He loses Woody and vanishes from the entire franchise completely. I've actually spent years trying to figure out what happened to him afterwards. Some of you think Al's toy barn eventually went bankrupt, pointing to how empty the store already seemed in 2, and how badly his big Woody deal fell apart. Others say he spent years obsessively trying to get Woody back. And honestly, the second one might not be completely crazy. Because years later, Toy Story of Terror sneaks in an Easter egg suggesting someone named Al was trying to buy Woody online. At this point, I think the man needs therapy. But as forgotten as Al is, he wasn't even the real mastermind in this movie. We can't forget Stinky Pete. Now, the funny thing about Stinky Pete is that when we first watch him in 2, he didn't seem remotely dangerous. He was polite, patient, and warm. which of course should have been the first warning sign, because as it turns out, the friendliest toy in the room was secretly the most dangerous one.
Oh, you was not fair. Spending a lifetime on a dime store shelf watching every other toy be sold.
Unlike Woody, Jesse, and Bullseye, Stinky Pete had never once experienced life with a child. For years, he sat sealed inside his original box, watching from behind a plastic window while other toys were bought, played with, and loved. And that isolation changed him. Rather than dreaming about finding an owner, Pete had convinced himself that every toy was destined to be abandoned. So when Woody arrives talking about returning to Andy, Pete works behind the scenes to stop him, hiding behind grandfatherly warmth right up until the moment he pulls out a pickaxe and tries to slash Woody to pieces. Fortunately, Andy's toys arrive just in time, and Pete ends up being stuffed into the backpack of a little girl named Amy, who immediately starts talking about giving him a makeover.
She's an artist.
Which is, to be honest, a perfect punishment. However, if I need to believe the archived material I found on the original Toy Story 2 website, Amy turned out to be surprisingly gentle with him. And since Stinky Pete never appears again after Toy Story 2, I believe he eventually accepted his new life and learned to enjoy being loved by a child. Which is exactly the future he spent the entire movie trying to avoid. And honestly, if that theory is true, then Stinky Pete may have gotten the most ironic ending in the entire franchise. However, the next villain had a very different fate. And he's also one of my personal favorite villains in all of Toy Story, Lotso. Or, to give him his full name, Lotso Huggin' Bear.
Welcome to Sunnyside, folks. I'm Lotso Huggin' Bear, but please call me Lotso.
Buzz Lightyear.
When I first watched Toy Story 3, I genuinely thought Lotso was going to be one of the good guys. He's pink, he smells like strawberries, and when Woody and the gang arrive at Sunnyside, he practically rolls out the red carpet for them. Seriously, who else fell for this guy? Everything about him screams trustworthy, which is exactly why his reveal works so well. Because beneath that warm smile was arguably one of the most ruthless villains Pixar had ever produced. At Sunnyside, new arrivals were assigned to the Caterpillar Room, where toddlers threw them around all day, while Lotso and his inner circle enjoyed a far more comfortable life elsewhere. And anyone who challenged that system quickly found out that Lotso wasn't nearly as friendly as he appeared. But what really separates Lotso from every other villain in this franchise, though, is what happens near the end of the movie. Because after Woody and the others save him from the incinerator, Lotso gets one final chance to do the right thing. And he doesn't take it. He walks away and leaves them to die. Just a bear who chose his bitterness over everything else. The last time we saw Lotso, he was strapped to the front of a garbage truck as a hood ornament. And that is exactly how his story ends. We thought, at least. Because, believe it or not, Pixar finally gave us an update. For the ones who have already seen Toy Story 5, during the climax, the very same garbage truck briefly appears again, and sitting on the front of it, Lotso. Which means after all these years, Lotso never escaped the fate he earned back in 3. And honestly, for a villain who spent his entire life refusing to move on, that's a pretty fitting place to leave him. Now, Lotso wasn't the only Sunnyside toy who disappeared after 3. Who remembers the henchmen villain toys of Toy Story 3? Characters like Stretch, Twitch, and Sparks all played supporting roles throughout the movie and helped make Sunnyside feel like a prison. Whether they were helping Lotso, keeping track of new arrivals, or simply supporting the daycare's strange hierarchy, they were all memorable parts. I completely forgot how cool some of these toys looked until watching 3 lately. And let's be honest, most normal people forgot about these characters years ago. So, if you're still here, welcome to the club, and don't forget to subscribe. Yet, despite appearing in one of the biggest movies in the franchise, they pretty much vanished afterwards. Not even one cameo, which honestly makes them some of the easiest Toy Story villains to forget. And trust me, I said easiest, not weirdest. Because wait till you meet the motel manager who somehow trained an iguana to steal toys for him, or the army of dinosaur warriors. But before we get to them, there's one member of this group who ended up having a very different fate. Chunk. Now, Chunk's story is actually pretty funny if you ask me, because unlike most of Lotso's followers, Chunk doesn't stay loyal for very long. The moment his personality switch gets flipped, he immediately changes sides and starts helping the heroes instead. Every time I rewatch, I forget just how quickly that happens. Which means that out of all of Lotso's followers, Chunk might be the only one who accidentally redeemed himself and lived happily ever after. In fact, during the end credits, after Barbie and Ken turn Sunnyside into an actual paradise, Chunk is shown helping run the Caterpillar Room. So, while Lotso ends up strapped, Chunk basically gets promoted to daycare stuff. The next one might just be the saddest villain in the entire franchise, Big Baby. And unlike every other villain on this list, Big Baby was never really a villain by choice. He shared the same backstory as Lotso, accidentally separated from their owner Daisy, made the long journey home on foot, and discovered they'd already been replaced. The difference is that while that experience turned Lotso into something genuinely dangerous, Big Baby simply followed whoever was in charge. And honestly, there's always something a little off about him. Because despite his size, Big Baby never seems nearly as cruel as the toys around him. When Woody reveals that Lotso had been lying about Daisy all along, Big Baby finally turns against him and helps bring Lotso's control over Sunnyside to an end. And that's where his story takes a very different turn. Because unlike Lotso, Big Baby actually gets a happy ending. The last time we see him, Sunnyside is being run far more fairly under Ken and Barbie, and Big Baby is finally living in the kind of daycare he should have had all along. Which means that, out of all of Toy Story 3's villains, Big Baby might be the only one who truly got a second chance. And unlike Lotso, this next villain eventually got exactly what she'd been searching for, Gabby Gabby. Now, Gabby Gabby might have one of the most surprising stories of any villain on this list, because when Toy Story 4 first introduces her, she immediately feels like the movie's villain. She's the only one trying to take Woody's voice box. She's running her operation through a group of ventriloquist dummies led by Benson, and she spends most of the movie manipulating events from the back of an antique store.
You have what I need. Right inside there.
Not exactly a great first impression. But the interesting thing about Gabby is that she wasn't motivated by revenge or power. She was driven by one thing: she wanted to be loved. You see, Gabby was manufactured with a defective voice box, and for decades, she sat inside Second Chance Antiques watching other toys find owners while she stayed behind, convinced that one flaw was the reason no child ever chose her. And after everything she did to get Woody's voice box, she finally gets her chance with Harmony, only for Harmony to reject her immediately. After all those years, the voice box changed absolutely nothing. But her story doesn't end there. Later in the movie, Gabby helps comfort a lost child at the carnival and finally experiences the genuine connection she'd been searching for her entire life. And by the end of 4, she's carried away in a little girl's arms, getting the ending she spent decades hoping for. What happens after that? Gabby hasn't appeared again since Toy Story 4, but unlike most villains on this list, the last time we saw her, she was exactly where she'd always wanted to be, with a child who loved her. I think that's all we need to know. Now, before we finish up, there are a few lesser-known Toy Story villains worth mentioning. First up is Ron from the 2013 Halloween special, Toy Story of Terror. He's just a motel manager who somehow came up with the brilliant idea of training his pet iguana, Mr. Jones, to steal valuable toys from guests so he could sell them online. And honestly, that's one of those Toy Story plots that somehow gets funnier the more you think about it. Fortunately for everyone involved, Jesse's able to expose the whole operation. The police showed up, and Ron ran straight into his own Sleepwell motel sign trying to escape.
Are you the manager?
Me? No, I'm not the manager. Tell you what, I'll go get him for you.
Which also happens to be the last time we ever see him. Then there's Reptilis Maximus and the Battle Swords from the 2014 special Toy Story That Time Forgot. Now, unlike Stinky Pete, these guys aren't really villains in the traditional scene, if you ask me. They're just a group of dinosaur toys who genuinely believed that they were real ancient warriors rather than mass-produced plastic, which naturally caused enormous problems the moment Buzz and the others showed up.
Got a crayon?
Once they learned the truth, they changed almost immediately. And, like Big Baby and Gabby Gabby before them, their story ends with growth rather than punishment. The last time we see them, they're learning how to be toys and adapting to a new reality, which gives them one of the happiest endings on this entire list. So, if Pixar brought back one lost villain tomorrow, who would you pick?